equation model f from x equals y can be used to define and pursue the world we dream, because y can represent what we want, that is our dream, f can represent the world we live in, and x can represent our actions or search for actions to parameterize the world so that it would be equal to what we want it to be. So equation model is general enough to define any goals with respect to any world. It can be viewed as a top-level hyperedge relating world and goals, and a mind could be viewed as a relation generating goals with respect to a world, because every time you do something or think of doing something, you are actually defining goals with respect to a world. And I was thinking about that and came to realize that, of course, um, the world is made of objects, and to represent the world, we need a way to represent objects. And that whenever we want something, we actually begin to decompose it into programs. If you have a goal to go to, let's say, to a shop, maybe you have to first uh, put on the shoes, take wallet, and then open the door. Maybe you have to do a sequence of actions that is actually hierarchical, and you decompose that into a kind of a program that you yourself execute as a body with respect to things, objects of the real world that are like the wallet, like the shoes, like etc. So in fact, you instantiate processes, and processes are just instances of programs with respect to objects. But the programs themselves are objects too. You could say that programs are just the schema of programs is defined by the programming language. And they are just objects. For example, abstract syntactic tree of Python could be just an object, right? And abstract syntactic tree of C++ could be just an object too. So they are instances of object classes or schemas. So anyways, a process we instantiate processes when we begin to do something, and that instantiating a process could be viewed as just taking a program and running it with respect to some objects. So one could summarize that goals decompose into programs running with respect to objects as processes. And intelligence itself could be viewed as an instance of f from x equals y, because if you take a look what people are doing, what kids are doing, what intelligence agencies are doing, for example, kids are very, they like to take things and do something with those things, explore, lick, play, and so on. And so what they're doing is binding to some world's objects and running some kind of programs with respect to them. Same with intelligence agencies, for example, they are collecting data about people, about the world, and then maybe writing some interfaces to that data so that they can actually send signals to change them, or so basically to run some programs with respect to them. And in that context, we have the infinity dialect, which come up to define programs in society, to define what we want, and help understanding how world works, as well as help ourselves realizing all kind of projects. So this dialect consists of the symbols to describe the what we have in the world on the left, and what we want, that is on the right. So assumption or hypothesis is that the world consists of assets, and which can be agents, places, events, and topics, and then that we can actually define um, conditions for those assets, when the needs being the term to describe a condition, a goal being a term to describe a set of conditions or a set of needs. So you can think of it like that. If you have, some background in asset risk, we take an asset like a random variable, and then we define what that range of, or what range that a random variable has to be within. That's a condition. That's an example of a need. And if we have a set of conditions, like I want to have this type of milk on the table, maybe that could be a goal, right? And then ideas are they are they come up when we want to realize goals, right? And when we think about how the goal conditions depend on what we can change. So usually ideas or good ideas are those which, if you don't have, for example, you need a lot of energy to push um, the train from one place to another, you come up with an idea of a motor and and then power plants and a battery and so on. So these are the things that you can construct with your small amounts of energy with your hands and then turn it into a big propulsion, for example. Large. So these are just nonlinear maps which help us to use one type of variables and transform them into large or small changes of other variables. The plans are being instances of ideas. So if you had an idea of like a motor, it's concept, right? It's just a concept that may be proving that you could actually um, transform energy from one type to another. But to realize that, using some principle to realize that, you need actually to go ahead um, and construct that motor in some specific circumstances with some specific resources. So a plan is just a hierarchy of steps to that instantiate an idea or multiple of ideas, and then a step being just an action that is needed to realize a plan, and a task being the terminal action that is indivisible. So it's just a terminal step. So anyways, the idea is that we can define goals with respect to world, that is agents, places, events, topics. And these are the definitions, in fact, of these same terms. But you can actually take a look at each of these definitions later. I just described the general ideas. So the applications of those ideas are that we could, in principle, be more intelligent, and that is more generally bind to world's objects and define programs with respect to them. So if whatever we want, we could actually maybe even automate through this model. Here the objects can be, and the programs can be these. So this is actually like a framework or a draft of a language where we just have a special type of variable classes on the object here. And we have special reserved words in the language like goal idea, need, goal idea, plan, step, task, and so on. And but the more general idea is that we could actually this is one type of dialect or one type of programming language, and if we have a Lisp framework, we could actually have a lot more all kind of object types from the real world, and including all programming languages, because now these symbols only have the, let's say, infinity dialect itself, but if we go into the more abstract or more concrete domains, we will find the standard programming languages like Python, like C++, and so on, which have their own reserved words. So we could have a set of all reserved words from all programming languages and use them all in one big system that could be like a Lisp based system, or or something like that. And and here we could take all Wikidata, I mean, whatever, all the internet essentially that has objects that can have interfaces, and then and this way we could kind of um, merge all programs, running programs. However, to run programs, whatever languages we define them in, requires the time. Either if it's for humans, if it's projects, then that we need the human time. If it's a like computer programs, we need processor time. If it's something like the power, like the construction plants and automated or robotic manufacturing plants, we need machine time. And running programs on society actually requires often funding. Um, yeah. So on making time or runtime, right? So how can we define, how can we create a runtime that is how to instantiate those processes like programs with respect to objects, which are themselves objects, of course. Um, so let's think about how can we do that. How does a mind tell a muscle to move? There are some kind of recognizable signals, right, in the society, as well as in systems. Monetary system is just one type of social signals. Making an order, make an order, like something ordering from a web shop and so on, and people follow this by making certain changes, like delivering you goods, right? What are the other signals? I think that we should look for things that look like opportunities to others, because um, people do spend significant resources for exploring opportunities, even if they will fail. So I think that if we create opportunities for other people through Infinity, for example, I think that it could result in a lot of cooperation and more resources for doing what matters.